Hello everyone, Lord Philip Kalena is back, and today we will talk about, again, Zovaal, but this time I want to talk about his decline in the WoW community, why it happened, what Blizzard could do to prevent it from the beginning, why the general approach to Zovaal in the community is actually contradictory by itself, and how I see him. Before delving into the video, I have to say this. In my opinion, no matter what happens at the end of the raid, Zoval's, Zoval's role in the World of Warcraft lore will be finished. If he wins, he will most likely be betrayed or will disappear for a long time. And if we defeat him, just like back in the ending of Legion, we will have a mess to fix ahead of us. Now, first things first, why do I care about Zoval and this character this much? Well, a couple of reasons for it. First, Zoval is the key in Blizzard's hands to finally change the story of the game dramatically. What do I mean by this? You guessed it. A world revamp, no faction, WoW 2.0, you name it. But, of course, what Zoval actually wants to do to remake reality means every character, every zone you love in Warcraft will be remade. And this is actually the first example why the story may look messed up. If Zoval wins, World of Warcraft may finally undergo a series of dramatic changes which it so desperately needs. But I am sure most of you, just like me, would not want to play a WoW 2.0 if the game won't include Azeroth we used to, or the characters we grew up with, such as Troll, Jaina, who cares about Bane, Anduin, etc. How would Blizzard solve this? Well, two options in my mind. If Zoval wins, he will be betrayed by his masters he sought to set free, the first ones. Well, according to our theory, of course, check it out. Shocked by the truth that his former masters, the first ones, became the Void Lords, he will be consumed by the Void. Then the freed first ones, or actually at that point the Void Lords, may usher the hour of twilight. If we defeat Zoval, which at this point seems the more likely option, we will find out Azeroth's World Soul was severely damaged, and that may be the turning point for the World Soul. At the end of Legion, Sargeras denied us victory by plunging his sword into Silitus, which, at this point, we can speculate thanks to some spoilers. After Argus's defeat, Sargeras manifested Argus's essence into a sword, stabbed his sword into Azeroth in an hope to reach Zereth Mortis, then Shadowlands, to break the Arbiter. That may look far-fetched, but we have confirmation that it was Argus's essence who broke the Arbiter. We can talk about it later. Returning back to the actual topic, the World Soul lore Blizzard introduced us to in Warcraft Chronicles led to this moment. As I have said before, everything that has happened since the beginning of Legion led to this moment. Azeroth's World Soul and the True Price. If we manage to defeat Zovaal, maybe the World Soul of Azeroth will finally awaken. And as we know, if a World Soul inside a planet awakens, there is no need for that planet to be destroyed. Or, after years of suffering, Azeroth's World Soul may die. I cannot imagine what it could lead at this point, but this is how Blizzard would manage to remake the world through a cataclysm never seen before. This is a pessimistic and not likely option because if the world soul dies, the old gods will die with it for good, and the upcoming void arc and everything that has been built up so far would be for naught. But destruction Zovaal would cause at the core of the planet may finally break the chains of the old gods. The world soul has suffered a great deal of events so far, the Sundering, the Cataclysm, and now this three deaths. Old God's prisons shall be destroyed, and here you go, Black Empire. I still do believe in the popular Nuzot's vision theory, but this is another way to finally introduce the Black Empire to us and let us explore the nature of the void in the years to come. So, another reason why I like Zovaal as a villain is because thanks to Zovaal himself and the mob, Blizzard introduced us to a new level of cruelty that we didn't see in WoW so far. The closest group to compare with the cruelty of the mob is probably the followers of the old gods and especially the Naga. We need more enemies like this, in my opinion. Now, let us discuss why Zovaal is in decline in the WoW community and why we managed to defeat him would not cause a backlash just like back in Battle for Azeroth. First, I believe our role this time would be to delay Zovaal as much as possible, and someone else would strike the final blow, most likely Sargeras in my opinion. Also, again, due to the silly hate against Zovaal in the player base, a great deal of players in the community would most likely be placed. But why? Why this constant rejection of Zovaal the Jailer? I actually still couldn't figure out the exact reason, but it seems Zovaal being behind of everything seems like retcon to so many people. This is a two-sided problem. One side we have Blizzard and the other side we have the community itself. Starting with Blizzard, they still did not explain Zovaal to most of the player base in a proper way. This is why patch 9.2 should be full of inside information about him, either from himself, from Natrism, or from the Eternal Ones. We have to see what actually transpired between Zovaal and the other Eternal Ones before his mantle of Arbiter has been dismantled. All we have are the words of the Eternal Ones, which is only one side of the story. Primus, Archon, the Winter Queen. According to them, Zovaal sought forbidden knowledge to defy the will of the First Ones, but on the other side, you have the Primus who carved the domination runes upon Zovaal to bind him to the mob in the first place. So, the Primus was the actual reason why we had, you name it, the Lich King, the Frostmourne, the Scourge, and so forth. So, I still believe the Primus is the actual antagonist of Shadowlands, but Blizzard does nothing to explain it properly, for now at least. On the community side, people tend to acknowledge every change in the lore as an inconsistency. But the thing is, Blizzard actually puts Zovaal into places inside the lore where there were holes in the first place. For example, from Chronicles Volume 3, the creation of the Lich King. Kil'jaeden remained suspicious of the Lich King. The Demon Lord had long since lost interest in trusting his minions, the Dreadlords, who had helped torment Ner'zhul and craft his armor, would accompany him to Azeroth from Chronicles Volume 3, Ice Crown and the Frozen Throne. So, is there anything that mentions where the armor of the Lich King was actually created? No, not at all. This was a plot hole left on purpose back in the year the book was released, 2018. And everything written in the book was written by Matt Burns, who has been working in this story team since Wrath of the Lich King, Robert Brooks, and almighty Chris Metzen himself. So, that plot hole has been put on Chronicles with Chris Metzen's approval. I don't know if Metzen, before leaving the company due to severe anxiety, left some drafts for 10.0 and beyond, but surely he knew about the Arc of Legion, Battle for Azeroth, and Shadowlands. So, this plot hole was one of the places where Blizzard put Zovaal into it to fill the gap. And the thing was, from that moment forward, the events fell in line in kind of like domino stones. So, when you put Zovaal behind the creation of the Lich King in the first place, it's normal for it would seem most of the major events happened in Warcraft lore so far have been somewhat influenced by Zovaal, most of the time indirectly. But if you take a closer look into details, Natrism and the Dreadlords, familiar faces since Warcraft 3, were behind the events that occurred most of the time. And considering the undeniable connection between the Burning Legion and the Maw, Zovaal is just another part of the puzzle we discovered recently. Events that happened in Warcraft 3 or World of the Lich King or Battle for Azeroth haven't changed. Their lore has been expanded onto a greater narrative, using the lore that was already established. Where is the change? Also, from the very first moments after Shadowlands was announced, content creators in the community were asking for a simpler, more linear storyline with a simple big bad guy. So, if the story of Battle for Azeroth was tiring and too complex for you, what is the reason for you being unpleasant now? If you wanted to chase down a big bad guy with no proper backstory through the entire expansion, there you have it at this point. So, here is a summary of my analysis of the antagonist of the Shadowlands expansion so far. But do you agree? What do you think? Please let me know in the comments below and see you next week.